my latest budget watch list, I wanted to focus on another colour that's very commonly used for straps, but very rarely features on the dial, and that is brown. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on deeper tones of brown, as there are some salmon and sand dial models that are verging towards the colour, but I want this video to be about those richer tones that aren't as common. As you'll know by now, I am a fiend for a textured dial, so I will have my eye out for models offering that little extra detail too. Before we start, let's lay out the ground rules for the video. First and foremost, the watch dial has to be brown. Secondly, the model has to be available under $1,000 at the time of making the video. If second-hand models feature, I will flag that up on the listed cost. Otherwise, prices will be the lowest price point that I can find online. Finally, I'll only be featuring each brand on the list once, so as to try and create as much variety as possible. I'll run through the list in ascending order. Let's get into the video. Straight away, I'm bending my own rules ever so slightly, because this is a digital display watch, and so there's an argument to be made as whether or not this truly belongs on the list. However, this is most definitely a brown watch, and one that is far more flattering and appealing in terms of its tone than the basic advertising images would indicate. It's a part of the Casio GShock Earth Tone range, which is a release just for the Japanese domestic market. However, it is available in the US and EU, and there are a few companies who export JDM models. This is one of the cheapest available. As a G-Shock, it's tough, rugged, and has all the features you'd come to expect. And that colourway only adds to that robust aesthetic. There's also a very similar Baby G variant in the same colourway for the smaller wristed. The EVO2 is a minimalist Bauhaus design that employs the analogous colour matching of rose gold and brown to full effect. The quartz movement keeps the cost of the model low, while still enabling it to feature Swiss made on the dial. The end result is a watch that punches well beyond its price point in terms of looks. The addition of small touches of red on the second hand, dial printing and little Mario hat crown really accentuate the subtle colouring of the watch to give it that little bit of extra pop. This isn't a list of watches that look more expensive than they are, but if it was, this would be a prime candidate. I was staggered to find this model listed so cheaply online, considering the RRP from the Hamilton official website is north of $1,000. It is an eBay listing, but they have multiple of this watch in stock, and it's from a reputable business seller, so I'm inclined to believe the price is accurate. Perhaps behind the scenes, the model has not been selling well, and that's why it's being offered at a hefty discount. But as far as a dress watch goes, I can't quite fathom why. You're getting tasteful sizing, a thickness under 10mm, and a vintage inspired deep gradient dial. You're also getting an Air Caliber 2892A2 automatic movement, which offers a 42-hour power reserve, a date complication, and 50 meters of water resistance, which is more than enough for a dress watch. The three things I would flag up are that gold is not going to be everyone's preference, and I do think a deeper brown strap would suit this model much better. However, given that you're getting something in the region of a $900 discount on RRP, I don't think shelling out for an extra strap is too bad in this circumstance. The final thing I would raise is the print work for Intra-Matic on the dial doesn't feel quite in sync with the rest of the font. If none of those are big gripes to you, there's huge value to be had here. It was very difficult to pick a Seiko for this list. The Presage Cocktail Time range boasts the Manhattan, which is an undeniably gorgeous watch, made only more luxurious by that rose gold case to match. Considerably more expensive, but still under budget, is the SPB 170J1, the Seiko Sharp Edges Brown. Another machine fashioned dial that plays with the light and features a rose gold case. In fairness, I do think it would be possible to do this entire list with Seiko models only, but given my rule set, I had to pick just one, and I went for the Hojicha, another member of the Cocktail Time range. I picked this over the Manhattan as it's a smaller model which I think is more appropriate for a dress watch. While the dial isn't as rich, I think it is more interesting. It's designed to look like the traditional tea ingredients from the Kyoto region. But the first thing it put me in mind of is the surface layer of a yerba mate. The gradient dial really adds to that texture, resulting in a subtle but visually arresting dial. This is something I would definitely look to buy for myself if I didn't already have a Cocktail Time model. The drawback with this one is that it was a limited edition and as a result can be harder to find than other models in the range. On the surface, you might look at the dial of the Hermetique Tora and think that it's very plain. While it is just one shade of brown, the dial itself has a lot going on which complements it. There are various layers to this dial, with the railway track set against black being separated from the main dial by a polished metal ring, on top of which sit the loomed hour markers. The numerals are similarly raised, which in combination creates a lot of shadows and depth. This is complemented further by the double dome sapphire crystal. So while the dial might be matte, it is constantly being cast in a range of light and shadow, and is a lot more visually arresting than it might first appear. The watch is sized at 37mm, which is extremely tasteful, and this is further magnified by the inset watch crown, which adds to the symmetry of the watch's silhouette. While it does come in just over 10mm in thickness, over 2mm of that is the crystal. The one thing to look out for with this model is the 46mm lug-to-lug, which is much larger than the 37mm diameter might initially indicate to you. It might not be the most creative from me in terms of a suggestion, as Out of Order also featured on my purple dial list, but I think it's such a unique use of colour that it's hard to argue with. It's also relatively unusual to find a brown GMT under the given budget, so that alone makes it unique for this list. It's also a watch that is heavily committed to the colourway. Not only are the strap, dial and bezel all brown, but the patina on the watch case will also show it up. I know not everyone is going to be a fan of the distressed look, but if you are, Out of Order is a great place to look. Just like Seiko, this range is inspired by cocktails, so there are a variety of other colourways available if this one doesn't take your fancy, and some of the others have brown features too. I've chosen the steel version of this watch over the gold-plated model as a personal preference, but I think that both models are actually viable options. This watch should stand out from the rest of the list as the dial is actually enamel, and it's described as a rich brown mahogany. Enamel in this instance is a form of soft glass mixed with various compounds which give it coloration. The enamel is applied to a metal disc and fired to between 800 and 1200 degrees depending on the desired finish and the compound used. The end result is an extremely hard material which exhibits vivid colours that don't fade over time. The watch itself packs a punch too, with sapphire crystal, 100 meters of water resistance, a choice of straps made from luxury materials, and it's 39mm in diameter. I've not included it in the listed price, but there are also currently coupons available for more money off, which I'll quickly show on screen now. If you conduct some research into brown dials yourself, you'll find an overwhelming amount of rose gold dress watches, many from fashion brands, and hopefully you'll see from my list that I've tried to steer clear of that to give a little more variety. The Nautiscaf has some of those same tones, but the bronze case will patina over time. Not only that, but it's actually fully made of bronze rather than just plated with its coloration like the aforementioned fashion watches. This Nautiscaf model is based on the brand's back catalogue, from a model that actually featured in the film Jaws, hence its retro styling. If you're someone who's against the idea of artificially aging a watch in the style we've previously seen from Out of Order, here is an opportunity to have the real experience yourself. The Citizen Series 8 range comprises multiple different model ranges within it. Focusing on the octagonal range, every model comes with the same 8-sided case design, but there the similarities end. Almost every model in the range has a unique design to the dial, with some being sunburst, some matte, some textured and some layered. The brown variant is a limited run model which features radial grooves combined with a sunburst effect, with a logo then applied on top. It's a very nice aesthetic experience. Dial aside, this is a 40mm diameter watch with compact lugs, but its chunky design and angular edges are going to make it wear a little bigger than those dimensions might indicate. So this wouldn't be a watch I'd necessarily recommend for the smaller wristed in the audience. I've actually featured the F77 on one of these sub $1,000 lists before, but I can't not mention it again here as it's basically the inspiration for the list itself. I'm absolutely in love with this watch style, so I can only apologise for the bias you're about to hear. The watch itself is fantastic and currently my daily wear, even above things like my Speedmaster and my Black Bay 54, but at work I would normally wear a brown leather belt and brown leather shoes. So having a brown dial watch makes sense to match with those, hence the idea of this list at large. I cannot speak highly enough of this dial. It's designed to mimic the weaving of carbon fibres and it's covered in a gradient effect that Nevada Grenchen calls brown smoke. The visual experience on wrist is so much better than the video could ever really highlight. It's a chameleon of a watch, looking positively golden from some angles and giving off rich brown hues from others. When you combine that with the tasteful sizing and texture, this is an awful lot of boxes ticked for me personally. I would just add that I really don't think this is a model that suits anything but a bracelet. So, there you have it. 10 watches with brown dials under $1,000. As ever, this is of course subjective, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the watches I've featured, or better still, recommendations for watches that you think have been overlooked. As a reminder to long-term viewers, I'm very open to making these list videos around your suggestions in the comments. So if there is anything you'd like to see from me next, feel free to let me know. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing to the channel for more content like this.